Story one nights in my house were never supposed to feel this way. The silence used to be comforting, a steady hum of peace after long days. But at some point, I stopped feeling alone. I live in Fukuoka, Japan. It's a quiet neighborhood, the kind where people don't lock their doors until they go to bed, where every street looks identical after dark. My home was small, perfect for one person, and for a long time, it had been just me. Then the sound started. At first, it was subtle, a shuffle where there shouldn't have been one, a misplaced cup, the faintest creak of wood overhead. I dismissed it as absent-mindedness. I was older now, pushing 58, maybe losing track of things, but the unease crept in regardless. I caught myself listening too closely to the stillness, waiting for something to break it. It always did. One night, as I was shutting off the kitchen light, I heard it clearly, a distinct rustling sound from inside the walls. Not outside. Inside. I stood frozen, my heart thudding against my ribs. I told myself it had to be a rat, maybe something trapped between the panels, desperate to get out. But it didn't scurry or dart away. It paused, like it knew I was listening. The next morning I found food missing. Just little things at first. Half a container of rice, a single egg, a can of tea moved slightly to the left. It wasn't much, but enough that I knew I hadn't done it. I lived alone. No one should have been touching my things. I tried locking my kitchen cabinets. That didn't stop it. By then I wasn't sleeping well. Shadows in my home felt heavier, like they were hiding something just out of reach. Every night I listened for movement, and every night I heard it. It was never loud, never obvious, just soft, creeping noises where none should be. I decided I needed proof, not for anyone else, for myself. The cameras weren't expensive. They didn't need to be, just enough to give me eyes when mine were closed. I set them up strategically, one in the kitchen, one facing the hallway near the attic entrance, and one near the cupboards that felt the most disturbed. The first night, nothing happened. No sounds, no movement. I almost convinced myself I was being paranoid. The second night shattered that illusion. It was early morning when I checked the footage. I sat with my coffee, the screen illuminating the dark kitchen. The first few hours showed nothing, just my quiet, empty home. But then, just past 2 a.m., the screen flickered, and there she was. A figure unfolded itself from inside the attic, moving with slow, deliberate motions. Thin, frail, dressed in mismatched, filthy clothes. She climbed down carefully, stepping onto my floor as if she'd done it 1,000 times before. My stomach twisted. She didn't hesitate. She moved with certainty, slipping toward the cupboards, opening them without fear. She took rice, water, something small from the shelves. Then she backed away, retreating to the hallway, toward the attic entrance. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She had been living there, in my house. For almost a year, a homeless woman, unnoticed, undisturbed. She had been with me through sleepless nights, through quiet mornings, always just out of sight. I had felt her presence. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. I called the police. They arrived quickly, efficiently. When they searched the attic, they found bedding, empty food containers, clothing I had never seen before. She had built herself a home within mine. She had waited until I slept. She had moved when I wasn't looking. She was removed that same night. I never saw her again. Story 2. I was staying in Paris when the sky seemed to stay gray for weeks. My name's Eli, originally from Krakow, but I'd been moving between cities since 1942. My parents were gone. I didn't even find out how. I just stopped receiving letters. I was 23, thin, always hungry, and always terrified. You get used to that fear, like background noise in your brain. But what happened that night, the night I went to 21 Rue Le Sueur, doesn't blend into background noise. It's the only thing I still dream about. A man named Dr. Marcel Petiot had a reputation. People whispered his name in cafe corners or behind closed doors. He was supposed to be helping people like me, Jews, resistance fighters, anyone trying to get out. He had connections, a way to South America, safe passage. All you had to do was pay, stay quiet, and show up when he told you. I heard about him through a Polish woman named Anka. We met at a Red Cross drop-in, and she leaned in close when she told me. He's helped dozens, she said, but he's strange, doesn't talk much, just do what he says. I didn't have dozens of options. I had one. The meeting place was his home, a townhouse in the 16th arrondissement. Quiet street, looked normal, middle class, maybe even nice, but unremarkable. I arrived just before 8 p.m., like he told me. I'd brought a small suitcase with my last valuables, family photos, 2 gold bracelets I'd hidden in the hem of my coat, a notebook with my father's old poems. There were 2 other people in the foyer when I arrived, a man named Claude and a woman, Elise. Claude looked nervous, pacing near the umbrella stand. Elise just stared ahead, lips pressed together like she was forcing herself not to scream. Dr. Petiot finally came down the stairs, and I remember thinking he didn't look like a doctor at all. Heavy-set, unshaven. His glasses were cracked in the corner, and he smelled like something I couldn't place. Chemicals, maybe. Formaldehyde. He smiled too much, but not with his eyes. Bonsoir, mes amis, he said. You're going somewhere better. He told us we'd be getting vaccinated first. South America had diseases, yellow fever, malaria. We needed protection. He said it so flatly, so matter of fact, that I didn't question it. Not until he told Claude to come with him down to the basement. Just Claude. I remember Claude hesitated. I remember Dr. Petiot's hand on his shoulder, firm, like he was guiding a child into a classroom. I waited. Elise said nothing, but I heard her breathing speed up. The basement door clicked shut. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I need to leave, Elise whispered. I stood. We should go. The door opened and Petiot came up alone. He didn't say anything, just looked at us. Elise, you're next. She looked at me. Where is he? Resting, he said. The injection makes you sleepy. She didn't move. Elise, he said again, sharper this time. She stood up. Then she stopped and turned back to me. I swear I will never forget what she said. Something's wrong, she whispered. Don't go down there. Petiot grabbed her arm. She screamed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was short, cut off halfway. He pulled her down the stairs. She tripped and slammed her knee on the bottom step. But he didn't stop. The door shut. I didn't sit back down. I moved to the front door and tried the handle. Locked. I checked the windows. Nailed shut. Panic swelled in my chest. The kind that makes your ears ring. That tells you to run, even if there's nowhere to go. And then I heard it. A low sound, like a moan. Not pain exactly, more like confusion. A gurgling voice from somewhere beneath the floorboards. I pressed my ear to the wooden floor. Something shifted beneath me. A dragging sound, a wet one. I backed away, heart in my throat. Then something touched my shoe. It was a thick, grayish liquid, seeping through the cracks in the floor. And it stank, not just of rot, but of chemicals, like bleach and death mixed together. I vomited on the carpet. Then I heard footsteps again, coming back up. I had no plan, no weapon. I ducked behind the coat rack and held my breath. The door creaked open and he stepped out. His shoes were wet. He stood at the top of the stairs for a while. Then suddenly he turned and walked toward the front room. Toward me. I didn't think. I ran, straight past him, slammed into his shoulder. He grabbed at me, but I twisted out of my coat. The gold bracelets, the photos, everything, I left it behind. I kicked the front window until it cracked. Again. Glass shattered and I dove through. My hand split open on the sill, but I didn't care. I hit the sidewalk and ran. Didn't look back. Not even when I heard him shout my name. I never gave it to him. I told the resistance what I saw. They already had rumors about him. Said people disappeared after going to his house. But nothing came of it. Until the liberation. They found over 24 bodies in his basement. Dissolved, dismembered. Hidden in lime pits and stacked in false walls. They said he killed at least 60 people. Took their money, their hope, and burned the rest. He was hanged in 1976. I survived. Barely. I still have the scar across my palm where the window sliced me open. And I still dream of that thick gray fluid sliding through the floor. The worst part? He smiled when they arrested him, said he was a patriot, said he'd only killed traitors and Nazis. And there were people, actual people, who believed him. Story 3. I live in a small place outside Rothenburg, Germany. I won't give you my exact address, but it's a quiet little farmhouse I inherited from my grandfather. Fields on all sides, and the nearest neighbor is a 10-minute drive away. That isolation used to comfort me until this happened. This story isn't something I tell people. I didn't even tell the police the full truth. They wrote it off as some kind of break-in gone wrong. But I know what I saw, and if I don't talk about it now, I think it'll eat me alive. It happened in late November last year. The nights had already turned bitter, and the wind howled through the trees like it always does that time of year. I was staying alone. My wife had taken the kids to visit her sister in Hamburg for a few days. It was just me in the silence. The first thing I noticed was the footsteps. I've got wooden floors and sound travels weird in old houses. Around the second night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to this distinct creaking noise. It wasn't the pipes or the wind. It was slow, deliberate, like someone walking across the floorboards in the attic. I sat up, held my breath, and just listened. I told myself it was an animal, maybe a raccoon or something that got in through the vents. But I couldn't sleep after that. The next morning, I went up to the attic. There was nothing. No mess, no droppings, no sign of anything. Just boxes and old furniture covered in dust. I thought maybe I'd imagined it. That night, I made sure to lock every door and window. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard it again. But this time, it wasn't above me. It was in the hallway. I grabbed the bat I keep under my bed and crept toward the door. I opened it quietly and peeked out. The hallway was empty, but I swear to God, I heard breathing, not mine. Deep, slow breathing, just out of sight. I turned on every light in the house, searched every room, every closet. Nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid. Lack of sleep, maybe. But then things started to go missing. Just small things at first. My keys, a screwdriver, my phone charger. One morning I found the back door unlocked, even though I knew I'd locked it. The salt shaker was in the bathroom. I'd find the living room lamp on in the middle of the night. Things like that. Harmless, but wrong. Then came the smell. Rotten meat. It hit me when I walked into the kitchen one afternoon. I checked the fridge. Everything fine. Took the trash out. Still there. It wasn't constant, but it would come and go. Like something was moving around with it. By the fifth night, I couldn't take it anymore. I installed a motion-activated camera pointing at the attic door, just to settle my nerves. That footage is why I'll never stay in that house again. I checked it the next morning. Around 2:13 a.m., the camera picked up something. The attic door opened slowly, and a man, barefoot, shirtless, with long, tangled hair, crawled out. He didn't walk. He crawled on all fours, head low, like an animal. He stayed in the hallway for a full minute, just listening. Then he stood upright and walked toward my bedroom. My heart nearly stopped. But here's the thing, I never heard him. He was completely silent. The door didn't creak, no footsteps, nothing. I rushed to the attic with a hammer in my hand. I didn't care anymore. I kicked open the hatch and climbed up. And that smell, Jesus, it hit me like a wall, like raw meat and urine and mold. But there was no one up there. Just a nest, old clothes, blankets, empty cans, one of my kitchen knives, a plate with dried meat stuck to it, and a pair of my underwear. I dropped everything and called the police. They searched the house top to bottom. They said maybe he escaped through the fields when he heard me coming. That maybe he was living there for days, weeks. Who knows? But here's the part I never told them. The part I don't understand. There were diaries, pages torn out and stuck between the floorboards. Written in my handwriting. Pages describing things I hadn't done. Me cooking meals I didn't remember making. Me watching the kids sleep. Me touching my wife's hair while she was unconscious. Pages that ended in lines like, "He doesn't know I'm here yet, but soon I'll be all he has left. I wore his skin in the mirror last night. It looked good. He's starting to hear me. That's not part of the plan. I swear on my children I didn't write those. But they were in my notebook, my handwriting, even my signature. I moved out the next day, left everything behind. The police never found him. They don't believe me. They think I'm just another rural guy who went nuts from isolation. Story 4. I live in Fayette County, Pennsylvania. A lot of locals here talk about weird stuff happening around the Chestnut Ridge. UFOs, lights, creatures in the woods. Most of it sounds like campfire nonsense. But what happened to me in 2017 wasn't a rumor. It wasn't secondhand. I saw it with my own eyes, and I've never been the same. At the time, I was working as a land surveyor. They were planning a new hiking trail system and needed to map out a few miles near Dunbar. I was out there alone for days, just following coordinates, setting markers, and logging terrain. It was quiet, peaceful work until I found the well. It was October, early morning. The trees were thinning out for the season, and the air had that cold, metallic smell. I was walking through dense brush when I nearly tripped over it, this perfect, round stone structure covered in moss. At first, I thought it was a rock formation, but when I brushed some of the moss away, the stones underneath were smooth, stacked clean, and circular. It was a well, but there was no house, no ruins, no signs anyone had ever lived out there. Just trees and silence. Curious, I leaned over the edge and dropped in a pebble. I waited for a splash. Nothing. No sound at all. I waited 10 seconds. 15. Still nothing. I pulled out my flashlight and shined it down, but the beam didn't reach far enough. It just vanished into black. I had a cord in my pack, so I tied a small plastic flag to the end and lowered it. A few feet in, it stopped. Felt like it landed on something soft, maybe mud. Then the cord jerked. At first, I thought it just caught on something. I tried pulling it back, but it was snagged. I gave it a harder tug. That's when I heard movement from inside the well. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't far away. It was close. Wet, sliding sounds like something dragging itself across stone. Then the cord started coming back up. Slowly. I didn't touch it. I swear to God it moved on its own. When the end of the cord came back into view, my stomach dropped. The flag I tied had been knotted. A neat, tight bow, like someone or something down there had tied it and sent it back. I took a step back, then another. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath. That's when I heard it. A voice, not quite human. It sounded forced, like air being squeezed through something wet. Just one word, stay. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't stop to grab anything. I ran through the trees, branches slapping me in the face, tripping over roots and rocks. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see what might be climbing out of that hole. By the time I reached my truck, I was soaked in sweat and shaking. I sat there for a full 10 minutes before I could start the engine. My gear was still out there. My transit, my records, everything. But I couldn't make myself go back. The next morning, I forced myself to return, told myself I imagined it. Maybe I had a panic attack. Maybe it was some kind of animal. But when I got to the spot, nothing was there. No well, no cord, no marker flags, not even disturbed ground. I checked the GPS coordinates 3 times. I was standing exactly where I'd been the day before, but it looked like no one had ever touched that area. Even my gear was gone. I reported stolen equipment to the company and quit the job 2 days later. I told myself that was the end of it, but it wasn't. 3 nights later, I woke up at exactly 2:41 a.m. My eyes opened on their own, and I couldn't move. I've had sleep paralysis before, but this felt different. I was completely awake. I could hear everything, my clock ticking, the wind outside, my own breathing, and something else. Heavy, wet breathing, not mine. It was coming from under the bed. I wanted to move, but I couldn't. I could only listen. Then I felt it, fingers wrapping around my ankle, long, thin, and cold. They squeezed gently, not enough to hurt, just enough to let me know they were there. And then I heard it again, that same word, right next to my ear. Stay. As soon as it said it, the grip released, and I could move again. I jumped out of bed, turned on every light, checked the entire apartment. Nothing. But on my ankle were 5 bruises, faint but real. I took pictures. They lasted for days. I moved a week later. I live in Ohio now. No woods, no wells. I don't hike anymore. I don't camp. I don't even go near forests if I can help it. Story 5, I live in Chorley, Lancashire. I'm a social worker, been doing it about 6 years now. You develop a thick skin in this line of work, or you think you do, until something cuts through it like a razor. This happened to me in 2021, and I've never spoken about it properly, not even to my supervisor. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it either. It was a Thursday night, just before Christmas. I'd stayed late at a client's house in Wigan, a neglect case, pretty rough situation. I missed the earlier trains, so I ended up getting the 11:18 p.m. 362 bus back to Chorley. Only me and one other lad got on at the Wigan interchange. Skinny guy, looked about 18, maybe 20. Wore a gray tracksuit with the hood up, kept glancing over his shoulder. The driver didn't say a word when I got on, which was weird. Just nodded. Bus was dead silent. No music, no chatter, nothing. I sat near the back, 2 seats behind the tracksuit guy. Bus pulled off down Wallgate like normal, but after about 10 minutes I started to feel off. Hard to explain. Like the air felt heavier. The windows fogged over like the heating was on full blast, but it was cold as hell. I wiped a circle on the glass and looked out. Nothing. Just black. Like someone had painted over the outside of the bus. That's when the kid turned around. He didn't say anything. Just looked at me. Proper stared. His mouth was slightly open, like he was trying to say something but couldn't. I gave him a nod like, "You all right, mate?" And he nodded back, real slow. Then he turned to face front again, but he kept twitching, like he had something crawling under his skin. I leaned forward and said, "You okay?" He didn't answer. Just said, barely audible, "You should get off before it gets on." "What?" I asked. He turned back around sharply. His face had changed. Not like inhuman, not monsters or anything like that. Just wrong, like a different face wearing his skin. Same eyes, but the expression was blank and stretched wide like a bad mask. His voice came out low but clear now. "It gets on at the next stop." I looked up. We were nowhere near any bus stop, just darkness outside. The fog on the windows had thickened, sticky, greasy. I could barely see through it. I stood up and made my way to the front. The driver still hadn't said a word. I leaned over the little barrier and said, "Hey mate, are we stopping in Chorley?" He didn't answer. He wasn't even blinking, just stared ahead like he was sleepwalking. His hands weren't moving. The wheel wasn't turning, but the bus was still going. I swear to God, the road outside wasn't moving either. It looked static, like we were just vibrating in place. Then the bus stopped. No announcement, no bell. It just stopped cold. Everything went dead quiet. Not late night quiet, dead quiet. Like sound had been sucked out the world. The front doors hissed open. No one got on. I turned to look at the kid, and he was gone. Vanished. His seat was empty. Not like he'd moved. Gone. No sound, no movement, just gone. And then I noticed his seat was wet, like someone had been sitting in a puddle. I was about to shout something when the lights on the bus flickered. Just once, then again, and then the smell hit. Raw sewage and burnt hair. Something got on, not a person. I never saw it properly, not head on, but I heard it. Something dragging, slapping, like meat hitting concrete, slow, wet, from the back of the bus. I froze. Whatever it was moving up the aisle. Each step sounded wrong. It didn't have feet or legs. It was pulling itself. Something gurgled. I think it tried to speak, but the sound it made wasn't right. It was like it was trying to copy human speech, but only got the rhythm, not the words. I didn't even think. I jumped off the bus and hit the pavement hard, rolled my ankle and everything. I got up, limped back down the road. I didn't look back until I heard the bus doors slam shut. When I turned around, the bus wasn't there. I don't mean it had driven off. I mean it wasn't there. Nothing. Just road in silence. No headlights, no red tail lights disappearing into the dark. It was like it had never existed. I stood in the middle of the road, swearing to myself, trying to catch my breath. I ended up calling a cab from a Tesco about half a mile away. I got home around 2:30 a.m. I reported it. To the bus company, the council, even the police. They all said the same thing. There isn't an 11:18 p.m. 362 from Wigan. Not on Thursdays. Not anymore. The route was scrapped in 2019 after a passenger went missing. Last seen boarding the late bus near Wallgate. Never got off. They showed me a CCTV still from the last night it ran. One passenger boarding. Skinny lad in a gray tracksuit. I told them that was him, the guy I saw. The officer looked confused. "That's impossible," he said. "That photo's from 5 years ago." I haven't been on a night bus since, and if you ever find yourself alone at Wigan Interchange and a quiet, greasy-smelling bus pulls up after 11, don't get on it. Story 6. I live in a small village near Mwanza in northern Tanzania. My name's Paulo. I work odd jobs, mostly fishing, sometimes fixing roofs when the lake's too rough. People around here keep to themselves, especially at night. That's just how it is. We don't ask too many questions. But there's one night I think about all the time. The night I heard that girl screaming across the hill. We had a neighbor, Mama Sada, who lived on the edge of the village. Everyone called her that, even though she wasn't that old. She had 2 daughters, both albino. That's rare here, and not in a good way. People whispered about it, said her ancestors must have cursed her bloodline. It was all nonsense, of course, but people believe that kind of thing around here. Her girls didn't go out much. I only saw them a few times, always clutching each other's hands, never speaking. Their skin almost glowed in the dark. It wasn't their fault, but they carried a shadow around with them, like something was going to happen, and everyone knew it, but no one said a word. The day before it happened, I saw a man in the village I didn't recognize. Tall, wore a red cap, which is weird in itself. People don't wear red out here, especially not at night. I saw him talking to the butcher. Didn't think much of it at the time. Travelers come and go. That night I couldn't sleep. The heat was unbearable. Around 2 a.m., I stepped outside to cool off. That's when I heard it. A scream. Not like a woman being startled. This was sharp, wet. The kind of scream that cuts through everything. It came from Mama Sada's hut. I froze. It wasn't just one scream. It was followed by another voice. Choking, frantic. Then nothing. Just the hum of crickets. I waited, heart pounding. I should have run over, but I didn't. I stood there like a coward, trying to convince myself it was a bad dream. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, dragging something. I swear to God, I heard something being dragged. Then came the smell. Not smoke. Something worse. Metallic. The wind carried it right to my doorstep. In the morning, the whole village was at Mama Sada's hut. Someone had found the younger daughter, Nasiri, I think her name was, curled up next to her sister's body, just laying there, silent, covered in blood. Her sister's arms and legs were gone. Gone. Clean hacked off. They didn't scream for help. They never had a chance. The hut didn't even have a lock. People didn't know what to say. I saw one of the older men from the mosque kneel and start whispering prayers, over and over, until his voice cracked. No one moved, no one asked questions. Eventually the police came from town, but it was all for show. Everyone knew what had happened. Albino limbs. Witch doctors pay high for them. Say they bring wealth, luck, power. A full set can go for thousands. Thousands? More than most people here will ever see in their lives. But no one ever got arrested. The man in the red cap was never seen again. The surviving girl, Nasiri, stopped speaking altogether. Not a word. Sometimes she just sits outside the hut and stares at the ground, her head tilted like she's listening for something. Her eyes don't blink. I once walked by her hut about a week after the murder. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. The door was open and I heard humming, childlike. I stopped. The inside of the hut was dark, but I saw her there, just sitting, still covered in dried blood even after all that time. She looked straight at me. Then in the same voice as her dead sister, she whispered, "He's not done." I swear on my mother's grave, it wasn't her voice. It was the other one. the one they buried in pieces. That was the last time I ever walked near that side of the village. Mama Sada moved away a few months later. No one blames her. Some say she took the girl with her. Others say the girl died the next night and they buried her quietly to avoid attention. I don't know. I never saw them again. But every once in a while, especially during the rainy season, I hear humming from the edge of the trees. Same melody, same soft voice. And I remember the blood, how the earth drank it like it was nothing, how no one did a damn thing. I didn't sleep that night. Story 7. I don't usually talk about this, not because I'm scared someone won't believe me, but because I know they will. And that makes it worse. I live in Ogden, Utah. Been here all my life. Back in '74, I was 21, working at a used tire shop a few blocks off Washington Boulevard. I remember the night like it's still under my fingernails. It wasn't the blood or the screaming that haunted me most. It was the smell. You ever smelled human flesh cooking from the inside? I didn't know anything was wrong when I got off work. Just another slow Thursday, cold, quiet. But I forgot my wallet at the repair bay and had to circle back. That's the only reason I was there. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong everything. The hi-fi shop was just across from the alley where I parked. I heard something, like a crash, then a scream that got cut off too quick. I thought it was just some teenagers messing around, maybe a fight. I didn't plan on getting involved, but then the front door opened and someone stepped out, dragging a kid by the hair. I froze. The guy was in an Air Force jacket. He looked calm, but his eyes didn't blink. The kid was limp, still breathing, I think. Then a second man came out and pointed a gun at him, told him to shut up or swallow more. That's when I knew I couldn't just stand there. I ducked into the shadows and circled the back alley. The back door of the hi-fi was open, just barely. I remember the metallic stench before I stepped inside, like burnt plastic and rot. There were 5 people on the floor, 2 kids, a woman, an older man, and another teenager, maybe 17, duct tape over their mouths. One of the Air Force guys was holding a bottle filled with some bright blue liquid. I'll never forget that bottle. He kept saying, "Drink it or I'll blow your head off." Over and over. The woman tried to turn her head, but he forced her mouth open and poured it in. The moment it hit her throat, she started convulsing. It wasn't vodka. It wasn't sleeping pills. It was Drano. I didn't know it then, but the way her skin blistered around her lips, the way she choked and thrashed, it was chemical death. They laughed while she screamed. Then they moved on to the others. The kid, he couldn't have been more than 14, begged through the tape, muffled, shaking, crying. He pissed himself. They poured it down his throat anyway. His body went stiff like it was trying to lift off the ground. Then he just collapsed, like a puppet with cut strings. I was frozen behind a shelf, watching, not breathing. I should have run, I should have helped. But I couldn't. I just stared like a goddamn coward. One of them got bored and grabbed a pen off the desk. He told the teenage boy to kneel. The kid was already gagging, his mouth frothing. The man said, "This'll shut you up for good." Then he jammed the pen into his ear, hard. I heard the crack, like stepping on a dry twig. The kid screamed once, then dropped. I thought I was going to throw up. I must have made a noise, because suddenly everything went still. One of them said, "What was that?" Then footsteps. They started sweeping the back room. I slipped behind a speaker cabinet, crawling like I was made of glass. My heart felt like it was punching through my ribs. They didn't find me, but they were close. One of them stood right next to me and muttered, "Maybe just rats." After that, they finished what they came for, loaded a few stereos into a van, and left the rest of the victims to die on the floor. They didn't even check if anyone was alive, like they didn't care. Or maybe they wanted them to live a little longer. I waited 20 minutes after they drove off before I moved. My legs barely worked. I checked the victims. 2 were already dead. The woman was wheezing, burned from the mouth down. One of the kids was unconscious but breathing. I called the police from the shop phone. They arrested Pierre and Andrews the next day. Air Force techs stationed at Hill didn't even try to run. During the trial, they showed pictures. One of the victims had chemical burns down to the stomach lining. The pen? It lodged in the boy's brain. They never explained why they did it like that. It wasn't about money, not really. The prosecutors said they wanted to try something different. They planned the drowno. They laughed about it after. I went to the sentencing, looked them both in the eye. They didn't flinch. Pierre was executed in '87. Andrews sat on death row until '92. No remorse, no apology, like they were proud of what they did. But that's not the worst part. The worst part came 2 weeks later. I was home trying to sleep. I kept seeing the boy's face, the one with the pen. Then I heard the sound again, that wet crunch, and a voice whispered in my ear, "Drink it." I bolted upright, no one there, but the room reeked of something sharp, like chemicals. It happened again the next night, and the next. Always the same voice, always the smell. It only stopped when I moved out of Ogden. I never went back to that alley. I don't go near audio shops. I still can't stand the color blue. People call it the hi-fi murders, like it's a movie or some horror story you tell around a campfire. But I was there. I saw what they did, heard the sounds, smelled the burning. Story 8. I live in Reno, Nevada, and I've never told this story publicly before. Not because I'm scared people won't believe me, but because I still don't know how to explain it without sounding insane. It didn't happen to me, technically. It happened to my uncle, but the photo still exists. I've seen it with my own eyes. And every time I think about it, I get this weird pressure in my chest, like something knows I know. My Uncle Ray is pushing 60 now. Back then, he must have been in his early 20s, so this was either the late 70s or early 80s. He and his two friends, Joe and Mark, took a road trip to the Grand Canyon. Ray always says it was off-season, sometime in late autumn, when the park was nearly deserted. Cold, quiet, not a soul for miles. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're not supposed to be there. They pulled over at a viewpoint that didn't have any railings. Just brush, rocks, and a terrifying vertical drop. You know the kind. No signs, no fences, just wilderness. They decided to take a joke photo. Ray was into weird humor even back then. He brought this old fishing rod and had this idea to pretend he was fishing off the edge of the canyon, just dangling the line into the abyss like he'd reel up a trout from the Colorado River, thousands of feet below. Joe snapped the picture. It was just supposed to be a dumb memory. They didn't notice anything weird at the time. Nothing felt off. No strange sounds, no sudden chills. They were there for maybe 15 minutes, joking, drinking beer, throwing rocks off the edge. Just 3 guys killing time. A few days later, they got the roll of film developed at some local place back in Reno. This was long before digital cameras, obviously. They went through the prints together in Joe's garage, laughing at stupid shots, blurry ones, beer cans, desert shots. And then they got to the fishing picture. It was Ray in the foreground, standing near the edge, holding the rod with a goofy grin. And behind him, half obscured in the thick brush, just 5 or 6 feet back, there was a man. He was tall, very pale. His skin was almost gray, wearing all black, long black coat, black boots, no visible logos or brands. And he was looking directly into the camera. Dead center, not surprised, not caught off guard, just standing there smirking. Ray said it best. He looked like he knew the photo was being taken. Mark thought it was a prank, said maybe a ranger or some hiker messed with them, but that didn't make sense. First of all, none of them heard anyone approach, and the brush was dry and dense. Stealth wasn't an option. Second, the area had no visible trails. It wasn't even a marked stop, just some random turnoff they picked. Ray swore there was no one else there. They would have noticed. You have to notice another person when you're standing right at the edge of a canyon. It's an instinct. You're hyper-aware. And this guy was close. Too close. They freaked out. Not dramatically, but in that quiet way guys do when they can't explain something. Mark started getting angry, like maybe someone edited the photo. Ray and Joe both said the negative showed the man too. It wasn't an artifact. It wasn't a printing error. He was there. Physically there. In the moment the shutter clicked. Ray kept the photo. For years he kept it tucked in an old shoebox with other random snapshots. I saw it for the first time when I was a teenager. He didn't show it like it was a ghost story or anything. He just handed it to me one day and said, "Tell me what you see." I saw him grinning with the fishing rod, and then I saw him. The man in the brush. He was out of focus, but not blurry. Just far enough back that you could tell he wasn't part of the joke or the group. His smile didn't match the energy of the photo. It wasn't playful. It was knowing, like he was in on something they weren't. I still remember the pit in my stomach when I noticed his eyes. They were too dark, not red, not glowing, nothing supernatural, just dark, sunken, like he hadn't slept in weeks. But he was standing tall, no backpack, no gear, just standing there like he belonged in the middle of nowhere. I asked Ray what he thought it was. He didn't answer for a long time, just kind of stared at the photo like he was trying to will it out of existence. Finally, he said, "I think he wanted to be seen." That line still messes with me. I've shown the picture to a couple friends over the years. Reactions vary. Some laugh, some get silent. Nobody thinks it's fake. You can't fake that kind of presence. Whatever was in that brush wasn't just some guy. It felt wrong. Not because he was doing anything, he wasn't even moving, but because he shouldn't have been there. Like a cutout from some other place got pasted into that moment. Ray never went back to the Grand Canyon. Joe moved to Alaska and doesn't talk to anyone anymore. Mark passed away in the early 2000s. Suicide, but that's another story. I asked Ray once if he ever dreamed about the man. He said no. But sometimes, he told me, I'll be driving, and I'll catch a glimpse of someone standing in the distance, in the trees, on the side of the road. Always too far to make out the face, but always still. I told him he was probably just shaken up. He shook his head. "No," he said, "it's not fear, it's recognition." I don't know where the photo is now. Ray deactivated his Facebook a while back, said he was tired of the internet. I've tried asking around, but no one has it scanned. If I ever find it again, I don't think I'll post it. Not because I'm scared people won't believe it. Story 9. I live in Lutsk, Western Ukraine, not too far from the Chernobyl zone, maybe a few hours by car. Radiation's not something you really think about day to day. Most people have a purifier for water. We test our gardens now and then, and if something tastes strange, we toss it. Life goes on, but I'll never forget the summer night my aunt nearly poisoned the whole family with glowing fruit. This happened about 10 years ago. I was 17, staying with my mother's sister, Tetiana, and her family for the school holidays. She and her husband Ole had a small house on the outskirts, the kind with a big pantry in the back and rows of glass jars along the shelves. They did a lot of canning. Nothing weird about that. That day, I went to the local market with Tetiana. She was always haggling. I remember her stopping dead in front of this old woman's stall. The woman didn't say much, just stood there behind baskets of produce. What caught our eye were the blueberries. Enormous, like marbles. I've never seen blueberries that big in my life. Not before, and not since. Deep purple, almost black, and not a single blemish. They looked unreal. "What village are these from?" Tetiana asked. The old woman shrugged. "Near Narodici." That should have been the red flag. Narodici's a known contamination zone, bordering the exclusion zone. But the woman added, "I grow them in containers, raised soil, safe." Then she held up a dosimeter and clicked it on. It showed a normal reading. Tetiana was convinced. Bought the whole batch. I didn't say anything. Who was I to question her? We spent the afternoon washing them, boiling jars, sealing lids. She was planning to gift some to her sister-in-law. "People buy them off the shelves in town," she said. "We're lucky we got these fresh." The house smelled like hot sugar and berries all day. That night, around 2 a.m., I got up for water. The house was dead quiet. The purifier in the kitchen takes hours to run, so we usually filled a big jug to leave on the counter. I poured myself a glass and stood there for a moment, just sipping and listening to the stillness. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought the hallway light was on, or maybe someone had left a phone screen glowing in the back. But the light wasn't coming from the hall. It was coming from the pantry. I stood there confused. The pantry door was closed, but a soft, bluish-white glow seeped through the cracks around it. Not bright, just enough to make the outlines shimmer faintly. I don't know why I opened it. I think I expected to find someone using a flashlight, but when I pulled the door open, it hit me like cold water in the face. The jars were glowing, all of them. That soft, unnatural bluish light was coming from inside the sealed glass, from the blueberries. There were at least 20 jars, stacked neatly, their contents shimmering like some alien organism suspended in syrup. It was beautiful in a way I can't describe, hypnotic, like looking at the sea in moonlight, but also wrong, deeply wrong. I stood there staring, paralyzed. I whispered, "Tatiana," but my voice felt swallowed by the dark. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps upstairs. She must have heard the pantry door. She called down, groggy, "Are you getting water?" I didn't answer, just stood there like an idiot. She came down barefoot, still in her nightdress. When she saw me by the pantry, she looked annoyed. "What are you doing?" I stepped aside, said nothing, just pointed. She looked, squinted, then blinked. She said nothing for a long time. Then, "The hell is that?" She walked up to the jars, reached for one. I shouted, "Don't touch it!" She froze. Her hand was an inch from the glass. We stared at those glowing berries, neither of us speaking. I felt my heart beating in my throat. The glow was pulsing now, barely, but enough to see. Like it was alive. She whispered, "They're not supposed to do that." I said, "They're irradiated, aren't they?" She didn't answer. We waited until morning. Neither of us could sleep. She told Ole what happened. He didn't believe us until he opened the pantry and saw it himself. No one said anything after that. Just silence. The kind where you realize something could have killed you and you almost let it. We called the regional environmental office, reported it anonymously. They came in hazmat suits, took the jars. One of the men looked at me before he left. He didn't smile. Just said, "Don't buy from roadside stalls." They never told us what was in those berries. We never heard anything else about it. But later that week, I heard from someone that a few other families in nearby villages had bought fruit from the same old woman. A woman matching her description was found dead in an abandoned house 2 weeks later, near the zone. No ID, just her and a bag full of rotten fruit. I still think about it sometimes, about what would have happened if we'd eaten them, or gifted them to someone else, or just waited a little longer. Tatiana doesn't buy produce from strangers anymore. Neither do I. Story 10, I live above a bakery in Whitechapel, East London. Sounds charming, right? It's not. The smell of burnt sugar seeps through the floorboards. The pipes groan at night like they're dying, and the air feels heavier than it should. I moved in last year because it was cheap, and I didn't have many options. I work night shifts cleaning at the Royal London Hospital, and I sleep during the day. Most of the time, I barely see anyone. The flat's old. I'm talking soot in the vents, rotting floorboards under the carpet, brass doorknobs cold as ice even in summer. A few weeks after I moved in, I found this hatch behind the wardrobe in the bedroom. It wasn't locked, just wedged shut. Curiosity got the better of me one afternoon, so I pried it open. It was a narrow crawl space, barely lit by a slit of daylight at the far end. Dust everywhere, rat droppings, and weird scratches on the wood inside, like someone had clawed at it trying to get out. Anyway, I didn't think much of it then, just sealed it back up and forgot about it, or tried to. One night after my shift, I got home around 3:30 a.m., soaked from the rain, bone-tired. I remember the hallway outside my flat smelled like damp earth, which was weird because it's all concrete. When I stepped into my place, everything felt off, colder. The kind of cold that sinks right into your spine, and it was dead quiet, not even the usual clanking from the bakery pipes. I took a shower, ate some toast, and collapsed into bed. I must have been asleep for maybe an hour when I woke up to this rhythmic tapping. Not loud, just tap, tap, tap. I thought it was the radiator at first, but it was coming from the wall, the one the wardrobe stood against. I got up and leaned close. Nothing. I moved the wardrobe aside and stared at the hatch. It was open. Not all the way, just enough to see pitch black behind it. I swear on my life I hadn't touched it since the day I found it. I stood there for maybe a minute, not breathing, just watching. Then I heard it, a dragging sound, like something being pulled slowly across wood. I slammed the hatch shut and pushed the wardrobe back. No sleep after that. The next day, I asked my downstairs neighbor, Mr. Klein, if anyone had ever said anything weird about the flat. He's in his 70s, ex-butcher, and doesn't say much unless you're talking about meat or Millwall. But when I brought up the hatch, his face dropped. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "No one stays long up there. You're the fifth one in 3 years." I asked why. He just said, "They all moved out sudden. Some didn't even pack." The next night I tried to stay awake. I left all the lights on, TV playing static in the background. But sometime around 4 a.m., I must have dozed off on the couch. I woke up to the sound of someone breathing, not mine, slow, rattling breaths, right behind the sofa. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I just stared at the blank TV screen, heart hammering in my chest until the sound stopped. Then I heard bare feet shuffle across the floor, slow and sticky, like they were leaving something behind. Wet. I turned. Nothing. But there were footprints, bare, dirty prints in a trail, from behind the sofa, across the kitchen, and stopping at the hallway. They were smeared with something dark. It wasn't mud. I didn't sleep again. I stayed at a mate's for 2 days. When I came back to grab some stuff, I found a note slipped under my door. Old paper, cursive writing, faded ink. It just said, "I never left." That was it. No name, no explanation. I bolted out, tried to report it, but what the hell do you even say? That your flat is haunted? That someone or something is crawling through your walls and watching you sleep? I moved out the next day, left everything behind. Clothes, furniture, even my cat. I couldn't go back. 2 weeks later, I looked up the property records. Back in 1891, there was a woman who lived in that flat, a midwife. Name was Annalise Grafton. She was accused of killing 7 newborns in her care. Said she buried them in the walls when no one was looking. Before the police could arrest her, she slit her own throat in the flat. Thing is, they never found the bodies. They sealed the flat up for decades. When it was finally reopened in the 1960s, the estate agents gutted the place, remodeled it, turned it into a rental. The crawl space? That wasn't part of the original plans. They think it was added after. Hidden. I don't tell this story often. People either think I'm crazy or lying, but I know what I heard. I know what I saw. Thanks for watching. Don't leave before leaving a like to this video. Also hit the subscribe button to support my work. And as always, have a horrific nightmare, my dear.